Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of The Mad Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, I'm going to be talking about the Utah Mammoth and the Utah Jazz. I know, shocker. I was actually thinking of maybe taking the week off just because it was my birthday and then it was the 4th of July weekend and all that stuff, but sports waits for no man, and I'm here to talk about things. So I'm here. Let's do it. Mainly, I'm going to be talking about the major trades that happened for both teams, as well as the direction that both teams are going in, how I see things working out, and then also just speaking on my previously stated opinion that Walker Kessler is crucial to what the Jazz wanted to do. And I'll talk about that as well. But thank you all so much for being here. You're awesome people. You can find me, by the way. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. That is the Mad Cave Podcast. You can also find me on YouTube by searching up the Mad Cave Podcast. Yeah, that's really how you can find me. And then if you want to email me, you can. That is madcavepod@gmail.com. And then you can also share this with Ryan Smith. You know, get me up in there. Share it with Big League Baseball. Or what is it? Shoot. I should probably look that up before I tell you to share me with them. But the project that is bringing baseball to Utah. Let me look that up while I'm speaking with you. But you know, let's have them listen to me as well. Major League Baseball bid by Big League Utah. That's what it is. Big League Utah. Share it with them too, because you know, being the face, not the face, but the voice of Utah sports, I'd also like to be the voice of baseball in Utah. I think that'd be really great. But you've already done a lot for me. Thank you. You each are all awesome individuals. My college football preview is also coming. Thought I would bring that up too. We are getting close. There is no second transfer portal, so the rosters are pretty much what the rosters are. Players can declare that they are intending on transferring, but that's basically a redshirt year now, and so it doesn't really count. They just won't be playing, basically on the practice squad, a la Brendan Sorsby. But I'm not talking about that today. First, I'm going to talk about the Utah Jazz. I know it's a little weird me starting with the Utah Jazz just because I'm not a fan of them anymore, but I do cover them. And as a former fan, looking at what they've done this offseason, I'm in favor of it. Now, Jazz fans hate that, you know, they lost Walker Kessler, and that's understandable. Walker Kessler was a pretty darn important part. You can listen to my episode a couple of weeks ago where I talk about the importance of Walker Kessler to what the Jazz were attempting to build at that time. But losing him to the Lakers always stings. You go back to Karl Malone, right? It's always going to sting losing a player to a hated franchise. I wouldn't really call it a rivalry anymore because the Lakers have, 900 million championships and the Jazz have a grand total of 0. Yeah, but you look at the package that the Jazz got for Walker Kessler. How do you turn that down? Utah got more for Walker Kessler than Dallas got for Luka Doncic. Let that sink in. They also got more for Walker Kessler than Boston got for Jaylen Brown. Again, let that sink in, Jazz fans. You hoodwinked the Lakers, which is why I'm of the opinion you don't allow a former player agent to become a GM. He'll just get laps around him by competent GMs, but Dallas didn't have a competent GM at the time, and Boston, well, they made it a toxic workplace and a toxic environment for Jaylen Brown. He didn't help himself either. There's no party you should root for in that mess, but they kind of tanked the value themselves. Yeah, it happened. But the haul that Utah got, and let me read this off for you, 2031 first, 2033 first, unprotected, completely unprotected draft picks, and pick swaps in 2028 and 2030. We all know that the Lakers are one Luka injury away from being a lottery team. We all know this. Walker Kessler, Austin Reeves, Colin Sexton, Jared Vanderbilt, those guys aren't carrying the Lakers into the playoffs. They're just not. And so Utah gets all of these picks, and rooting for the downfall of the Lakers will never be more sweet for Jazz fans than in the next 5 years. because of the haul they got. Will Danny Ainge make all of these draft picks? No, he won't. They're probably going to get traded, and it's a lot of ammunition for him to have come trade deadline season. It's another masterclass of Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck, and company by showing you don't overvalue your own players. If somebody comes in with an offer like this is basically a Godfather offer. Because the Jazz figured they were probably going to lose Walker Kessler anyway to LA just because LA is overpaying him big time. Listen, Walker Kessler is a very good center. He's very good. He's not great, and he's not Hall of Fame worthy. He can be replaced. He would have to be replaced by a couple of players for the Jazz, but that's doable. What the Lakers did is they mortgaged their future on a guy who had to sit out 77 games last season. On a guy who nobody really knows what he can do. A lot of promise. He's really tall. He's got long arms. So he's a good offensive rebounder just because he's bigger than everybody else. And he can block a lot of shots. That's true. But is he a good rim runner? Is he a good screener of the ball? That's what Luka Doncic needs to be at his best. They got him one in Dallas that one season, and they went to the finals. So, is Walker Kessler that? He could be. He could be a lot of things. Nobody really knows. And I also saw a lot of fans talking about, well, what was Walker Kessler's Instagram post about? You know, the one where he's like sitting in a creek bed and he says you don't put roots down where you don't intend to stay. Negotiation tactic. That's all it was. He wanted to drive up his price. He knew what he was doing. That's all he was doing. He was using his time in Utah to drive up his price in LA. It's fine. He's making a boatload of money now, and it worked. So kudos to him and his agency. They got the Lakers big time. Because the Jazz were not going to go over a certain dollar amount for this player because that would hamstring them in negotiations for guys like Keontae George, Ace Bailey, Darren Peterson when their rookie contracts came up for renewal. And Utah didn't want to do that for Walker Kessler. So they decided, fine, LA, you win this round, but we're going to win the next 5. And so they got 5 first-round picks. Pretty much all unprotected. And the pick swaps, if you're unfamiliar, are basically just whatever pick is better between the Lakers and the Jazz get the better one. So for all of those drafts, the Jazz have those picks. And with the new lottery odds and the anti-tanking stuff that's going to be happening now, at least for the next couple of years, you want as many lottery balls as possible in there. And the Jazz, if they somehow don't make the plan, which I think is almost impossible at this point, they will have a lot of lottery balls. So this was a masterclass by Danny Ainge and company. Everyone is applauding Danny Ainge. It was Justin Zanuck as well. And looking at just the treasure trove of picks the Jazz have, once again, they still have picks from Minnesota. They still have picks from Cleveland. They still have picks from a bunch of different teams. And they still have their own after next season when it conveys to Oklahoma City, I believe. So, there's a lot to be happy about here. It's not doom and gloom. It's not the end of the world. The Jazz were not going to compete for a championship this next season. They were not. There are teams in the East that are miles better than the Jazz. There are even teams in the West that are miles better than the Jazz. Can I give you Exhibit A, Thunder of Oklahoma City, and Exhibit B, Spurs of San Antonio? Boy, it must be eating up Adam Silver that 2 of the smallest markets in the NBA are his best teams. It's got to be eating him alive. And then the Jazz are everyone's favorite dark horse pick. Do you think he's stewing in his office thinking about that? I think he is. It makes me smile. As a small market advocate, it makes me smile. It really does. So, really fun stuff coming from the Jazz. We saw Darren Peterson's first Summer League game. Calm down. It was a Summer League game. The majority of those guys aren't going to be making an NBA roster. It's just guys trying to show what they have to see if they can land on a G League roster or get signed overseas. That's really what Summer League is about, and then showing off your top pick. It's the same thing with Cam Boozer for the Grizzlies. He had a great game, but who was he playing against, you know? So, the future for the Jazz. Let's talk about that now. Without Walker Kessler, the center position is going to be a problem. Jaren Jackson Jr. prefers to not play center, which is fair. Lauri Markkanen obviously does not prefer to play center. He prefers to play power forward. Same thing with Jaren Jackson Jr. The Jazz did re-sign Jusuf Nurkic as a sort of insurance policy to Walker Kessler walking. Funny. But he's not really starting caliber anymore. He was when he was paired up with Dame Lillard and the time in Portland, but now he's best coming off the bench to spell guys, as evidenced by his consecutive triple-double games. So this season, it's going to be all about the alchemy and the wizardry of Will Hardy. What can Will Hardy do to make this team hit the play-in, get out of the tank, all while not really having a true center, a true five? And now, Danny Ainge isn't done. There are players out there that he could go get with this treasure trove of picks. Top of mind is Miles Turner in Milwaukee. He signed that off-season free agent deal with Milwaukee thinking that Giannis was going to stick around for at least a couple of years. That didn't happen. Milwaukee is probably going to be hitting you can't really call it a tank anymore because the NBA hates that term, so a rebuild phase. So why not send a couple of firsts over to get Miles Turner? That would solve the problem, right? Now, that's when you run into salary cap, second apron, penalties, third apron, all of that stuff about the salary cap and losing draft picks, losing all of this, that, and the other thing. So that is a problem. The Jazz don't really have a, air quotes, bad contract on the books right now. Not really. I mean, you could say that the contracts for Jaren Jackson Jr. and Lauri Markkanen are a little bit of overpays, but you can also argue that they're right on the money. So there's a lot that can happen between now and October when the season starts, especially when you give Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck options. You look at the roster, right, for the Utah Jazz. You just look at their roster, and it's a roster just on talent alone, without factoring in Will Hardy and his genius, that will make the play-in. That's basically how it is. Ace Bailey, Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski, Keontae George, Jaren Jackson Jr., Lauri Markkanen, Jusuf Nurkic, Darren Peterson, Bryce Sensabaugh, and even Mikhailic. Those guys will get a team to the playoffs just on their own. So then you add in the alchemy and the genius, reported genius of Will Hardy, and we saw how good he can be in that first season where the Jazz were in playoff, not play-in, playoff position going into the All-Star break that first year, and Justin Zanuck and Danny Ainge had to tear the roster down to prevent him from making the playoffs. So this team is going to make the play-in, at the very least, on talent alone. And then you got the home court advantage of the Delta Center, actually having something to cheer about for the Jazz for the first time in, 4 years, 5 years? Yeah, the Jazz are probably going to be making the play-in. That's the floor. The ceiling is I don't want to say top 4 seed because I don't see them getting into that conversation just yet, but at least a 6 or a 5, which means they're safe from the play-in. And who knows what's going to happen in that Commissioner's Cup thing that they have throughout the year. The Jazz could actually perform in that for the first time ever. So this season, there's a lot to hope for. There's a lot to be excited about. And just buckle up, Jazz fans. You're going to be feeling what the Mammoth fans have been feeling for the last 2 years. So it stinks losing Walker Kessler. It throws out that huge starting lineup that they were going to trot out of Walker Kessler at the 5, Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 4, Lauri Markkanen at the 3, Ace Bailey at the 2, and then you got Keontae George, who's taller than me, as the short one of the bunch. And so it's really fun just gaming out what that would look like. You can still do that in the new NBA 2K when it comes out. Just edit the rosters, put Walker Kessler back on, and see how it would do in the video game verse. But in reality, the center is going to be a bugaboo unless there is a trade in the works. Because as we all know, you don't really sign free agents in Utah when it comes to the NBA. You draft and you trade. That's really it. All right. So let's move this right along to the Utah Mammoth, and they're just outstanding, stand-up, standing ovation, Bill Armstrong, Chris Armstrong, the assistant GMs, the scouts, Ryan and Ashley Smith, the whole crew, for what I call a monumentally successful offseason. It really is. The only thing that would have made it better was either getting Dylan Larkin, who has still reportedly not moved off his 3-team trade list, foolishly, or Austin Matthews, who is probably going to at least play out the first half of the season in Toronto. So that would be the only ways that this would be better. Truly. So let me first talk about the free agent, or let's talk about the trades. Let's do that. So the Mammoth were active in trade season. They were. It started at the draft. It started with J.J. Peterka getting shipped off to Boston for 2 first-round picks. J.J. Peterka is a fine player. He's great offensively. He improved defensively this past season, but when push came to shove, he was a shrinking violet. And Utah saw that firsthand, said, you're not going to work. And they got a buyer to the tune of 2 first-round picks, and Utah didn't have to retain any salary from J.J. Peterka's $7.7 million annual cap hit. Okay, first, that's wizardry. So they got Boston's first-round pick, and they got a 2028 first-round pick from Florida. Obviously not high first-round picks, but first-round picks for J.J. Peterka. They then traded up in the draft from their own first-round pick. They traded a first and a third in this year's draft to get the LA Kings first-round pick to pick up Ethan Belchetz, who is going to be a power forward in the NHL. And yes, I know that can be confusing, power forward in the NBA, power forward in the NHL. A power forward in the NHL is basically a guy who does the dirty work. He gets physical. He pushes people around. He gets into the dirty ice and fishes pucks out of, the muck in front of the net, that sort of thing. Defensively, he pushes guys around. That's a power forward in the NHL, according to my small brain. So they get Ethan Belchetz, who's still 18, so who knows what he's really going to be, but that's kind of the path that's been plotted for him to be a better version of Lawson Krause, I think is where we're at with him. And they did that. They also then flipped the Boston first-round pick to secure their backup goalie situation for the season into getting Sebastian Cossa from the Detroit Red Wings. Sebastian Cossa did fall off towards the end of last season, but it's a goalie situation. Who knows what happened? Maybe he was playing hurt. Maybe they changed up the defensive scheme in front of him and it didn't jibe with how he was playing. So there's a lot that can go wrong there. I like the addition because it's a 23-year-old goalie who has done, he's paid his dues in the AHL, and for the most part, he's looked really, really good for the Grand Rapids team in the AHL. So now he comes to Utah, he gets a 2-year deal to be Karel Vejmelka's backup. Then the bombshell. The bombshell hit. And I am not so proud as to say that I didn't squeal when I read the news. I squealed. In fact, my family heard me squeal when I read the news on my phone when it broke. Vincent Trocheck is coming to Utah. Gold medal winning, front of the line penalty killer for the U.S. men's hockey team that was perfect on the penalty kill in that tournament, is coming to Utah. Yes. All that had to go back to New York was a third-round pick in this next year's draft, Cole Baudouin, who is being forecasted as Vincent Trocheck light, or diet Vincent Trocheck, if you will, and Sean Durzi. Sean Durzi's a great guy, great ambassador off the ice, a wonderful do-everything teammate who fell out of favor of the Utah Mammoth when they went out and picked up Mackenzie Weegar. Sean Durzi's also made of porcelain. He hasn't played a full season in quite a while. So there's that as well. That's all they had to give up. No first-round pick, no second-round pick. None of the premium prospects that Utah has. It wasn't Tichinginla. It wasn't Caleb Desnoyers. It wasn't Dmitry Simashev, Daniil Boot, or Artyom Duda, or Maverick Lamoureux. or Michael Hrabal. It was none of those kids. It was Cole Baudouin, a late first-round pick in 2024. You know, the guy that came after Tidge Aginla. So that is all Utah had to give up. They also gained a little cap space in the deal because in one of the weirdest things I read that day, Sean Durzi makes more money than Vincent Trocheck. Yeah, that's real. Sean Durzi is a $6 million average annual value cap hit, whereas Vinny Trocheck makes $5,625. Okay, I see what you're doing there, Bill. But then Bill wasn't done. We look at what Bill Armstrong did when it came to the free agent pool. And living in Utah my whole life, getting told that Utah sucks by multiple markets in the NBA, as well as college football recruiting, Utah did a wonderful job in free agency by picking up quite a few guys. They retained Kevin Stenlund, which I absolutely love. I thought that was a crucial signing, especially since they allowed Alexander Kerfoot to go, which really stinks because I loved Kerfy off the ice, what he was doing to help build the sport of hockey. It was great. Michael Carcone's picking that up. He's picked up that mantle, so that's fine. They retained Kevin Stenlund. They retained Nick DeSimone, who is a wonderful seventh defenseman. They re-signed Kyler Yamamoto, who I didn't think they were going to. So that was pretty good at a very reasonable cap hit as well of $1.75 million. Kevin Stenlund is $2.75, and Nick DeSimone is $1 million. So a total of $5 million there, which then allowed them to go out and get Anders Lee. Now, if you're not familiar with Anders Lee, he was the captain of the New York Islanders for the last 9 years. He is a guy who led that team, not just in points or with just the C on his chest, but off the ice. He won multiple awards for his work in the community. The King Clancy Award comes to mind. And then he also is a heart and soul player who throws his body around and will protect his teammates. And as we saw in that series against Vegas, Utah had precious few of those. Precious few. Now they've picked up a couple. They also signed somebody who I think is going to be sneaky important in Zachary Jones. He's 25 years old. It was less than $1 million of cap hit, and he does play defense. So he's another defenseman, and in the way it feels like it's going for the Mammoth when it comes to health, I feel like in the first year it was defense. It was the D core that was really hurt, and they were. Seemed like every other guy was going down with an injury. Last season, it was the forward group, whether it was Jack McBain, Barrett Hayton, Logan Cooley, Alexander Kerfoot. There was always somebody banged up in the forward crew. So if we're continuing this trend, it's going to bounce back to the defenders. So getting Zachary Jones, who is a very solid player for pretty darn cheap, is really good. So I like that signing as well. And then you also get a signing where Boston Bruins fans are thanking the Mammoth for picking him up, but it's just a one-year deal, $1 million cap hit for Andrew Peeke, who is not great defensively, but makes up for it by his offensive play-ish. So not a stellar signing by any stretch of the imagination, but one that will improve the team's depth, especially if guys like Dmitry Simashev, Maverick Lamoureux, Artyom Duda are not ready for the NHL at the start of the season. So this offseason from Bill Armstrong and crew is a big win. The only thorn in the side right now is Barrett Hayton signed an offer sheet in restricted free agency from the New Jersey Devils. And that offer sheet is for $4.775 million. And Utah has two options here. They can either match it and Barrett Hayton signs with Utah for the season, but then he becomes an unrestricted free agent and Utah cannot trade him this season. Or they let him walk, they let him go for that offer sheet, and Utah gets a second-round pick back from the New Jersey Devils in this upcoming draft. If it were me, I'd let him walk. Getting a second-round pick for Barrett Hayton is huge, in my opinion, because Utah basically upgraded when they got Vincent Trocheck over Barrett Hayton. They got Anders Lee, They re-signed Michael Carcone and Kyler Yamamoto. They're getting a healthy Jack McBain back. Where does Barrett Hayton fit? Short answer is he doesn't. So getting that second-round pick gives Bill Armstrong wiggle room. It gives him another asset to use, and it also frees that $4.775 million under the cap, which will bump Utah up to 9.2, 9.3 in that area to be able to go out and make another trade. Now, while Bill Armstrong is loath to trade his prospect pool, he's got a ton of draft picks to be able to send out still. In this next upcoming draft, he has 2 fourth-round picks, 2 fifth-round picks. He picked up a third-round pick from the Maple Leafs. And so he's got all of his picks in 2027. He's got 2 first-rounders in 2028. He's got all of his picks in 2029. And should Barrett Hayton walk, he's got another second-round pick in next year's draft deal. Now, I'm not saying he's going to make another one before the offseason's done, but as the season goes along, that's more ammunition for him to either backfill an injured player or to go out and upgrade should somebody come available, like, who knows? I mean, who knows at that point in the season who's going to come available? But I think it's been a masterclass of an offseason for both Utah teams, and I haven't said that since Utah got hockey. I haven't said that. That's awesome. So the Jazz and the Mammoth both get A grades from me because Walker Kessler was leaving no matter what. He was going to LA. But the Jazz basically traded Walker Kessler to the Lakers for 4 first-round picks just so the Lakers could have 1 extra year on Walker Kessler's contract. That is crazy good. And then the Utah Mammoth got one of the premium players on the trade block this offseason for a defenseman that fell out of favor, a young player who's, predicted to become the player they received, and a third-round pick. Yeah. And they also picked up another leader in the locker room in Anders Lee. So, and then this coming deadline, so the NHL salary cap is a little bit weird. The bonuses count at the start of the season, and then when you hit the trade deadline, those bonuses no longer apply against your salary cap, so you technically have more room. And so if you go to Puckpedia, you see that Utah will have around $21 million in cap space this coming trade deadline. And if you subtract Barrett Hayton from that, they're going to have $25 million in cap space for the remainder of the season. So they could go out and be still my heart, get Austin Matthews. Should he say, yeah, I'm done. I'm out. Get me out of here. Or maybe deal doesn't get done with Dylan Larkin. Season goes on. He expands his trade list. They go out and get Dylan Larkin. Or who knows? Maybe somebody else completely. But Bill Armstrong will have options. So I'm going to leave you with this. The future is bright for both professional teams, actually for all 3 professional teams in the state of Utah. Real Salt Lake has a bright future. They have a ton of young talent playing right now. Obviously, the Utah Mammoth are finally pushing through, and the Utah Jazz are going back into contention. So it's a great time to be a sports fan in Utah. And I haven't even talked about BYU, the University of Utah. So buckle up, everybody. It's an exciting time to be a sports fan in Utah. Thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you all next week when you spelunk back into the Matt Cave.